Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pursuit Live. I'm your producer, Chris. Joining me, as always, is your creator and co-host, Dave Hawkins.
What's up, everybody? Good to be back.
And tonight, I think we got a good show for you. Little different than our usual, and that's what we like to do out here is keep it well-rounded. So joining us tonight is Captain Matt Ketcham of Peconic Gold Oysters. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad I could squeeze it in. First time I sat down in a while.
Well, if you got to sit down, we're happy that you did it with us. So before we get started, I just want to take a minute. I want to give a quick shout out to a big fan of the show and one of my guys that I work with. He's probably one of my best guys that I work with. So, Eon, if you're watching, want to wish you a happy birthday, bud. Cheers.
There you go. Cheers, Eon.
All right. So, I think this will be an interesting episode, everybody. We're gonna get into the life of a commercial fisherman here, and this is something that not everybody really digs into, and not everybody on our show might kind of be familiar with. So I don't know. You guys ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right, let's hammer away.
All right. So, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Matt and I have actually known each other, and our families have known each other probably elementary school at this point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, Matt. If you ever want to
Decades.
talk about it, I'm here.
We had some distance between us, but we're still friends. So I
Yeah.
guess we did all right. We're kind of coming full circle now.
Yeah.
Our worlds have collided for the better. So with that being said, I always remember you loved. So obviously we grew up on Long Island, surrounded by water, fresh water, salt water, any type of fishing that we wanted to do, it was available. And I think you've tried it all in your younger journeys, man. You had a fishing pole in your hand anytime in the summer. We would take you out with us anytime we could. My dad couldn't believe the passion you had for fishing. Like we always do in the beginning of these shows, we want our guests to kind of give us the background, what your story is. Obviously, what got you on the water? What got you so hooked to the water? And then how did that transition into this life that you built for yourself? And you're doing very well for yourself at this point.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. And actually, one of my best early fishing memories was going fluke fishing with you, your father, and your brother. I think we launched a boat somewhere in the Sound, and we did
Yeah.
great on the fluke. I think the size limit was probably 16 or 17 inches back
It was
then.
small back then, yeah.
But we got a
Yep.
bunch of fluke, bunch of
Yep.
bluefish, couple striped bass. It was a home run. But I think when I was 7 years old, for some reason, I told my dad I want to go fishing for my birthday, and I think I caught him by surprise. So he took me to the Rosie, and my birthday is in like late April. So he took me to the Rosie flounder fishing because there still was some flounder around, and he didn't dress me right at all. It was a cold, windy, wet,
Yeah.
miserable day. Everybody was freezing their butts off, especially me. I was soaked, and I just wouldn't go in the cabin. I caught one flounder, and for some reason, I fell in love with it, and that was the start.
All right. So moving a little bit forward now, as you're getting older, was this part of your career path, let's say, like moving out of high school? Did you attend college for like maritime reasons or captain reasons or anything like that? Or was this just kind of something that evolved as you got older?
Yeah, I was never really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I kind of wanted to work on the water. But I always thought like, oh, I'm better than that. I should be in an office, or that's at least what my parents were telling me probably. But,
Right.
my first job was the bait shop. Then
Yep.
I worked in Captree, which was cool, but it was fluke fishing in the bay every day.
Yeah.
Which was kind of boring, doing the same drift over and over. And then
Sure.
I went to University of Rhode Island for aquaculture and fisheries technology, and I did a lot of commercial fishing up there and worked on the headboats up there. And
Okay.
that was some real shit up there. Offshore crabbing in the winter,
Okay.
cod fishing at Cox's Ledge, seeing 40-pound cod come up my first couple trips up there.
Yeah, it's
Just,
big.
Awesome. And I saw a lot of different fisheries up there, which was cool. And I always thought, I don't want to be growing oysters. Once I get introduced to oysters, I was like, I don't want to be growing oysters. I want to be a big manly fisherman. But then I saw this guy up there, Perry Rasso, doing really well. And I said, you know what? That's pretty cool. I ended up getting a lease in a lottery from Suffolk County. And I just jumped in with both feet to that. I just said, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to try it. I'm not going to dip my toe in. I'm just going to do it. I know I'm going to be doing this 10 years from now. I'm going to make it happen. And I think that's the mindset you have to have in this business. You can't just try it. You got to just do it and have no plan B pretty much. Although I could have went back to fishing, but
Right.
I just said I'm going to do it, and I just did it.
Yeah, because this is obviously, I'm sure there's a season with to a certain extent, but doesn't matter. Rain, shine, snow, blowing 50. You know, obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but for the most part, let's put it this way: you guys are out there. You're out there. You're doing it. You got to collect the gear. You got to plant the seed. But at this point, you're what, mid-20s when you got that lease?
Yeah, early 20s maybe. Yeah, I've been
Early
doing this
20s.
since 2013. Been doing this 11 years, so I guess I was like 24, 25.
Okay. I'm just honestly very curious, and I'm sure there's a lot of people curious. What is that? How do you buy ocean bottom, or bay bottom from Suffolk County? What's that process like?
Yeah, so Suffolk County has a lease program, and they have pre-selected spots.
Okay.
Brookhaven has a program similar to that now. Islip has a program similar to that.
Okay.
Different states are different.
Sure.
In New York State, it's a little bit more bureaucratic and sloppy. We got to deal with Army Corps, Coast Guard, Department of State, National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA, all your local municipalities. And honestly, like, the county is more of a mess than the state and the feds. But anyways, you get your lease, you get your permits, then it's time to farm. You need seed, you need equipment, you need boats. And what people don't realize is you need a dock slip or a boat ramp, hopefully nearby, because logistics is important. And you
Sure.
need a storage area for all your stuff. And you need all the tools to fix everything when it breaks. You can't always just bring something to the mechanic. You need it for tomorrow. I can't wait 3 days. So that's why I always keep my welder and my mechanic, buttered up with some oysters or eggs or honey
Oh
or
yeah.
fish,
Oh yeah.
So if I call one of them with a problem, they're helping me out. They pick up the phone.
Yeah, it's a very old school, old tradition style barter system. Whatever you can do to that point. Anytime you introduce water and boats to the mix, people are very receptive. They understand, like, you know, it's when you're dealing with, like I said, things can get hairy real quick underwater, especially in the winter seasons. Um, Man, there's so much to dive into, even with just that. So obviously, oysters, they start as a seed. Many people might not even comprehend that. I mean, where we're at as far as Long Island, let's say, have you seen a difference, especially in the Bay? Let's talk about the South Shore in particular. We had a couple nasty hurricanes come running through a couple years ago, and we had that breach that actually really flushed out the bay into the ocean, and it allowed, if anybody doesn't know, Long Island has a barrier island to the south of us, which divides our bay from the ocean. So when we had that breach, essentially, the ocean came in and basically flushed out that bay, which is very shallow, stagnant water. Did you guys actually see a benefit from that and the growth? And was it a short time frame, or did it take a little while?
Well, I'm out in Peconic Bay, but my
Yeah.
friends on the South Shore, I was hearing mixed things. I was hearing from some of the clammers that it was just causing some sort of gyre or eddy where the water wasn't flushing out in certain parts. But then I heard from guys like over by Bellport Bay and
Hmm.
Smith's Point Bridge that it was incredible and there was so
Right.
much more life there. So I think it definitely changed it. I would assume for the better,
Yeah.
overall. But yeah, it was one of those things where I was hearing different things. I'm not 100% on it, but
Right.
I
Because
think
I know you're on the North Shore. I was just
yeah.
curious if it had such an effect where it actually made its way around the bend, and actually if you saw a difference on the North Shore as well.
No, I'm pretty far back in the bay. I'm like
Okay.
off of New Suffolk there, where Legends is, which that restaurant's been forever. So some people might recognize that. I'm over by Robbins Island, so I'm
Yeah.
in between the forks, pretty far back in the bay. But we got some good current there.
Okay.
That's gonna be one of my next Instagram posts, actually, because you should
Nice.
have seen it today, like ripping tides.
Yeah. I know. Like we were just talking about before the show. Obviously, at the end of the show, we'll make sure we get all your social media up, especially the Instagram. It's fun following along, and Who's your seagull friend? Is that Rondo, if I remember correctly?
Oh, Nando. You know, he
Rondo the
left
seagull.
us
Yeah.
once the head boat started porgy fishing. He just
Oh, really?
out of here. Yeah.
All right.
He's
So that's a little
porgy
teaser. You
custom
guys got to
stuff.
check out the Instagram. They have a pretty much a second mate and a seagull, a very loyal seagull, I'll say, that hangs around with him.
Yeah. He
pretty
bounced
funny.
quick though. He's probably made some new friends once they started cutting porgies.
He's a
on the
fair
other
weather
boat.
seagull, I guess it sounds
Yeah.
like. Chris, I mean, I'm going to tap you in here. There's so much we can dive into as far as gear and literally what this process is. How do you want to break down the show tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. However you want to run it, Dave.
You got any questions you've been thinking of?
Yeah, I do. I kind of want to get into the specifics on the equipment a little bit here. If you could kind of walk us through what it takes really to get started in the business, not just a boat and seed and everything, but like it's not just any boat that you can go out there and do this.
Yes. So like guys on the South Shore and in Mauritius, they can get away with pretty much just a skiff, a table, or a piece of wood to sort on. And they're working in waders typically where they can go to their site, jump in the water, and handle bags by hand. Out in Peconic Bay, it's a lot more challenging for everybody who has a lease in Peconic Bay. I'm in 8 to 15 feet of water, so I can't jump in waders, which is nice. I like to stay dry in the winter, but I need a lot more cranes and winches, and so while that was much more of a bigger initial investment, now I'm lifting a cage that has 10,000 oysters in it instead of walking around holding a couple bags that have maybe 5,000 in them. So I feel like it made me more efficient overall, although I have a lot more moving parts and initial investment and fixed costs. But it's different kinds of cages. And the thing with oyster farming is you can have a spot here and then have a spot 50 yards away or 100 yards away, and it could be a totally different patch of woods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some are not good for oysters. Some are good for a certain type of gear. Some aren't. And, right now I have a 10-acre lease where we use cages. They're called off-bottom cages, but they're cages that just have little feet on them that keep them off the bottom a little bit. And then I have another 10-acre lease where I use cages that actually float on the surface and it automatically tumbles the oyster. So now you have this equipment getting the shit kicked out of it all year. And there's a lot more rigging and you have to do it precisely, but it grows a higher quality oyster in less time and with less labor, I'd say. So I use a combination of both, and I think I'm the only one really doing that right now.
Now, how long does it take for an average, your average oyster from the time you're out there and you seed till harvest? What's a time frame you're looking at?
So I get my seed. They're a little bit smaller than my pinky nail, like about 10 millimeter to 12 millimeter. It takes me about a year and a half to get it to market size on average. But you always have, every time you buy a batch of seed, whether it's 300,000 or 500,000, you're going to have stuff that's growing faster. You're going to have stuff that's growing really slow. Even some runts you might want to get rid of eventually. And then you're going to have like your bumper crop, which is like most of them. And most of them are about a year and a half. Although I recently invested into some seed that has certain genetics that make it kind of like a seedless watermelon, where they don't contribute any energy to reproduction. And these things, all they do is grow. They almost grow too fast. I have to only use my floating gear for that. Otherwise, they get like too long and skinny growing them on the bottom. So those, I get them to market size just from June to November, which I think is like 6 or 7 months or something.
Wow.
And that's basically our growing season. It's the end of April to the end of October. So whatever you have ready for market at the end of October, you have to make that last November, December, January, February, March, April, May. They're really not meaningfully growing until June again. So it's tricky because it's not like a regular farm on land where you can see your broccoli and your cauliflower. We just got cages in the water and color-coded buoys that you can hardly make out what they are after they're fouled up. And, we try to make sure we have product like consistently and reliably every week because we're shipping to the city and supplying all these
Right, right.
restaurants here.
And I wanted to touch on that. We'll save that for a little bit later on down the line because you're also very involved with the communities and you do a lot in the local area and towards the city. So we'll touch on that later. I want to stay with the gear because I still like we're still just like scratching the surface on this. Obviously, a couple of comments on Instagram was kind of funny. It's like this is awesome. We're doing deadliest catch now. So as far as like pulling up, like you said, these giant baskets of oysters, that's some type of electronic or hydraulic hoist that'll pull them up to the deck. Now you got the cage on the deck. Correct me at any point if I'm wrong. You guys dump them out on more or less call it like a sorting table. You have to check for a certain size, I would assume. Do you guys manually inspect each oyster with like a gauge? Do you slide them over something and if it falls through, they're too small? What's that process like once you got them on the deck?
So when they're really small fingernail size, we're basically just stocking these bags really light, and typically they're in the floating cages. The first 2 or 3 times we touch them, we're just dumping them on the table and then rebagging them a little bit lighter. We're bringing more bags out from our storage area, and we're just thinning them out. We call it splitting them. Then after that, once they get to a certain size, let's say about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, now we're putting them on that table and we're running them through a tumbler, which is just a big tube, a mesh tube, and it rinses the oysters, prunes the oysters, giving them a nicer shape, but most importantly, it sorts them out into a few different sizes. So now we can start getting them into bigger mesh sizes. That way they have better water flow, more grow, more dough, we always say.
I like that.
So,
I like that.
yep. So then we know, after touching them, let's say 6 times or 7 times or 8 times, sometimes a dozen times, eventually we get them into our biggest mesh, 1-inch mesh. Then we know, like, all right, we're going to put these down. We'll try to let them sit 3 or 4 more weeks. And then we know it's going to be worth our time to dump them on the table and sort them out. That's hand sorting.
Okay.
Then everything that's good from that goes back down into inventory cages, we call it. And then another week later, it goes on the table immediately into bags. We count them into 100s or 200s, rinsed, bagged, tagged, on ice within like 5 minutes. All while we're shaded, just for, to be extra safe.
Yeah, yeah. You had different color baskets on the boat. I remember seeing you actually did a post on this recently. You want to touch on that real quick?
It's kind of just like,
I think we're on the topic now, kind of, right? Sorting purposes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We sort like we have what we call go backers, stuff that's small goes back. Then we have our petites, which is normally what we sell, and then we have like our selects or large, we'll call them, stuff that's a little bigger that I'll give to Frisky Oyster in Greenport because they cook them, or
Okay.
like some chefs will request larger stuff. But this time of year, most of what we have is petites. But as we get into the fall, everything's beautiful, and we'll put that, we'll have a lot more of those larger size.
Yeah. Okay. So who like inspects your catch? Let's say, like, do you get stopped by Coast Guard? Is it DEC? Is that just random checks at that point? Or how does it work?
Same guys you see in the woods, I guess. The DEC.
Okay.
Yeah, usually when hunting season opens up, they leave us alone a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Right now, they're all over us.
Well, I'll tell you what, we love you guys because you keep all the channels open for us. We don't get iced in, so it's a win-win for both of us.
True.
Yeah,
there's some good duck hunting out by us in the winter, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. I noticed a couple times we can't get out of Patchogue unless the baymen are going out. So we're like, all right, somebody else went out. We're good to go. But I would equate that probably to what hunters encounter. If you're doing nothing wrong, you got your paperwork, you're within the limits. They are not there to bust the wrangler, the outdoorsman's chops. They're just doing their job. They're making sure that you can pass this on to the next generation because you're not abusing it. So, I mean, anybody that really has a bad encounter, quote unquote, with DEC or somebody like that, you might have to reflect on yourself a little bit. Why was that a bad encounter, Because I haven't. I've only had, honestly, positive encounters with DEC. I have not had one bad one.
Yeah.
All down to earth, very cool people. A lot of them hunting fish just like us. So, again, you got to look at yourself at that point.
Yep. I agree. I think we just look at it as an annoyance. It's like, go check a part-timer, but the part-timers aren't out, so they're hopping on our boat, and we're like, come on, guys, we got work to do. You see what we're doing.
Right. Is it locals? The same guy or girl?
You
Probably
know,
that
it
stays
always
around.
seems like it's a new batch of young guys
Okay.
out here. I think because they get them trained up,
Okay.
and it's so expensive on Long Island, and they're not getting paid enough. And I think they end up moving upstate or somewhere else.
I got you. Okay. So, all right. Chris, help me out here, buddy. Like I said, there's so much to cover with this.
All right, so we did have a question in the comments that I do want to talk about here, and that's weather. Now, hurricanes and things like that. How does that affect the production?
You know, it depends where you are. I talk a lot with my buddy Paul from Mauritius Bay. He has great gun oysters, and we had that crazy weather last December where it blew southeast, which is usually from December to, you know, the end of the winter. You have to worry about west and northwest, and it's a really cold, dry cold, you know, bitter cold. And you think of ice, cold, north wind. This December, we had like this tropical, hard rain, a lot of precipitation, southeast. It was like a monsoon kind of thing. And that for me was a really bad direction. And that for him was also a really bad direction. But all of our stuff was rigged up perfect, and we escaped it relatively unscathed. Some people weren't so lucky. The other thing in the winter that happens, like in some of the bays, it will blow west 40 for a few days in a row. That water just doesn't get a chance to come back in. The wind actually holds the tide out. So now instead of having your gear in 6 feet of water, let's say, where you can hop in and walk around in waders, if you're that kind of operation, now you're like 3 feet of water. And if there's ice, the ice can crush your gear. It could freeze on your gear and move it. Or you might just end up in the surf zone where your stuff's getting thrashed around. And if your gear gets dragged, it'll just like shove mud into the oysters, and they have a hard time recovering in the winter. So yeah, the weather, you know, we have to go when it's blowing, but it's like those extreme events. They're unpredictable. You try to be always rigged up for everything. That's how I look at it. Just always be ready for everything. Sometimes you're going to take some losses. I haven't really yet, but I've been lucky. Those poor guys down in Florida, they get hit with hurricane after hurricane. We are kind of sheltered here. Like, we're kind of sheltered here. We're kind of good.
Now, how does like heavy rainfall affect things like with freshwater runoff?
Yeah.
Is that something that really, like, when it affects the salinity of the waters, does that affect the crop at all?
Yeah, I notice it affects the growth a little bit of them, because they'll be like they grow in spurts, right? They'll grow like incredible for a couple weeks. Then like you're always lifting up stuff that has 3 weeks of growth on it or 4 weeks of growth on it. So it's kind of hard to tell. All of a sudden you're like, I'm catching up on it. But all that fresh water, I think the oysters have to adjust to the salinity a little bit, and it also kills whatever algae bloom is happening. And there's different algae blooms, different species. I don't know all of them, but we're always like eating oysters on the boat, and I can almost tell by the taste of them how they're growing, what they're doing. And yeah, the rainfall will shut them down a little bit. It'll change the temperature, change the salinity, and affect the algae blooms that they're, you know, that's what they eat.
It's amazing what a little fresh water can do. You know, they're so
Yep.
used to that pH level or the salt level of the bay.
Well,
Interesting.
listen, dihydrogen monoxide is the most deadly substance on the planet.
Oh, you're going chemistry on me. That's water.
Took you that long to figure it out?
I was not good at science. I'll promise you that. Anyway, we're not going to talk about my grades in science. I'll promise you that. All right. Let's talk about actually filling some orders. Like, obviously, I know you have a lot of standing customers. You have the farm stand now, which is more like a local thing where people can come and go. But I'm talking like your main customers. How did you get hooked up with them? Really, when did you really hit the market and be well known for your products?
Just dropping samples off probably in 2014, and just being consistent and reliable, and just paying attention to quality. So now I have a lot of restaurant accounts where I'll text the chefs, you know, once or twice a week, and we have a delivery route. We'll go here one day, another day I'll hook up with my dad. He does all my Patchogue deliveries because I'm from Patchogue. And then we have a lot of wholesale where I'll drop 3,000 off here or 2,000 off there or 5,000 off here. I have a few good wholesale accounts. So it's about having that balance. And then, the retail, the farm stand, it's incredible. Venmo or cash, self-serve. We're going to start doing merch drops over there, I think. So,
Nice.
that's been really good too. It's good to have different avenues.
Absolutely. For those larger orders, though, you're not doing that all in your pickup with the coolers, right? You actually have like a freezer or box truck, or how you get them there?
We have a few of those really big fish boxes where we could fit
Okay.
5,000 oysters in it with ice.
Okay.
And I have this crazy crane on my truck now that
Yeah.
we lift the coolers right off the boat, right
Nice.
into the truck. Cause we used to have to do it by hand. So we'd come in after a 10-hour day and now we got to unpack and repack oysters. And it just
Cool.
was, my crew was going to kill me or my crew was going to quit. So I had to.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So obviously the Peconic Gold. I know it's probably self-explanatory, but what went into that name? Obviously that would be your most popular seller, if I'm accurate.
Yeah, that's our brand name. We have that trademarked. That name is good because the oysters have a little bit of a gold color. When you think of gold, you think of the best.
Right.
And Peconic is where it's from. People know the logo. People see the logo.
Yep.
So it's a good brand, and that's what we've went with for a while. Good oyster name. Some of them have like a sexual innuendo, but it's got to be descriptive and also where they're from, I think. So it's stuck.
Is it on the larger size for the oyster, or is it on the medium? Like, what kind of break it down? Like, what makes it actually? What is a Peconic Gold? So just to explain to some of the listeners,
a Peconic Gold is a really healthy, well taken care of animal that was, because of our efficient process, was handled enough times to make it easy to shuck. It's meaty, and it's beautiful, and it's going to be consistent within each bag that we wash and put on ice and deliver.
Nice. What do you see? Like when you go to some of these events, what's the most common way that somebody, let's say they normally eat oysters, what's the most common way you would prefer them to see? Like just a little bit of lemon, or I'm sure you don't want to see too much hot sauce and Tabasco on there.
Yeah, it's funny. People always ask me, "Oh, what do you recommend?" And I'm always like, I always have one straight up first.
Yeah.
You're supposed to chew it and enjoy it. I like to get a little sip of that brine. And then after that, I really like one with lemon, maybe a little hot sauce. Like that's how I really like it. Lemon and hot sauce. My wife and I eat them up like that all the time.
So no cocktail
a lot of times
sauce,
people
just
ask
straight
me
hot
that
sauce,
and
right?
then just put every sauce on it. It's pretty funny.
What'd you
So
say,
no
Chris?
cocktail sauce, right?
What's that?
No cocktail sauce, right? Hot sauce.
Well, we serve cocktail sauce with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Not bad. We also carry the fresh Holy Schmidt's horseradish from out here, which is tremendous.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
Really good.
Chris, chime in anytime you want, my man. If we're going to start talking about food, I'll get long-winded.
Oh, well, listen, oysters happen to be one of my favorite foods. So
there you go.
It ain't getting old.
Take it away, brother.
All right. So we did have a question, and actually, I'm kind of curious now. What are your favorite bibs?
Okay.
My favorite what?
Your favorite bibs?
Oh. In the winter, I like the harvesters. The Grundens harvesters.
Yep.
But they're like really thick and stiff. I was gonna make a funny video and say, do you want to know what a rectangle feels like? Get a pair of these. But the ones that are really made for what we do are the X trappers. I think they're guy cottons because they have like layers. Because sometimes this mesh gets broken and you rip it, and you got to know how to like walk around the stuff so you're not getting caught on it. Whenever somebody hops on my boat, I let them borrow a pair of skins. They're destroyed. But the X trappers are really good. But they're always coming out with new stuff. We like the extra tough boots. Those are really good.
You running Dexter for knives, I would say, if you had any type of cutting knife, you're using Dexter.
I really like the Victorinox.
Okay.
Those things are like dangerously scary sharp.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a lot of
Some people would call
imitation-
them the Swiss Army knives of knives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not a knife. It's a knife. I like having a microphone. I can add some effect to it now.
Yeah. Anything serrated for cutting rope that you can keep
No,
on
without
you.
a doubt. Well, I mean, what is that? What's your what's the knife you keep on you? You know, on the waist if you got to cut out of them.
Yeah, one of those little Vickies
Okay.
for sure.
All right,
Victorino.
that's good to know. I know our duck hunters. We got a lot of duck hunters in here. You want, God forbid, you got to use that knife to cut away. That knife better be sharp because you need it.
Sharp
So,
or serrated. I'll tell you this from my experience diving. I have this Gerber Swiftwater rescue knife that I used to carry on my life jacket when I was firefighting, and I still have it. All right, that thing literally is on the inside of my waders. It's serrated on one side, blunt edge. Anybody that carries a knife like that, the reason you want a blunt edge when you're panicking, you don't want to stab yourself. You want to just cut through what you got, and that's it. So
that makes sense. Okay.
yeah, you want something serrated because it's
Hey.
gonna tear it up.
Can you sharpen the serrated at all?
I mean, can I? Yes.
I think you need like a small round file, right? You got to get very meticulous.
Your average person probably wouldn't because it does. You do have to get in there very precisely. So
right. I would agree with that. I mean, my favorite combo has always been like a serrated lower section, you know, straight upper section with like a Tondo clip at the front. But like I hear what you're saying now with that straight front. You know, if you have that now and I'm going to cut out of my belt, my wader belt, now I'm just cutting myself at that point. I never understood why they had a flat front, but that makes sense now. Look at you, Chris. Producer Chris coming in hot with the info right there.
Listen, I mean, I'm a wealth of knowledge and experience.
He's an engineer, by the way, man. In case he hasn't said that 18 times, he's an engineer.
I didn't say it today. Today I was going with water rescue and diver.
Yeah. Good to be back, Chris. Back in studio.
We didn't miss you. We handled it.
I'm sure you did.
It's fine. We didn't miss you one bit. As a
I had fun last
matter
week.
of fact, next time you want to take a vacation, just let us know.
All right, back to our poor guest, man. We got sidetracked here.
All right, I think I was probably talking too much, anyways.
No, man, this is honestly, these are the types of show we love. Honestly, like I said, we were trying to keep it diverse. We figured the timing worked out good. We just got through this heat wave here on the island. I mean, speaking of heat, you know, you get a nasty flux of this heat? Do you see any change in the product? I know it makes it harder on you guys to get out there, but is the quality hold through?
Well, I'll tell you, the secret for us for beating the heat is I drop a couple bags of oysters off at the local farm stand here at Wickham's, and we load up on peaches and blackberries and blueberries, and we eat a bunch of that in the morning.
Yep.
Liquid IV, make sure we're drinking water. We feel great. We don't jump in the water enough, but that probably would be a good idea too. But
yeah,
you know, the water temperature, usually July is the hottest month. It hasn't been that bad this year. The water temperature is around 80. It will get up near like 85 up in the bay here.
Okay.
You know, so and when that happens, the oysters do slow down. Like they do slow down a little bit. They're still growing pretty good. So yeah, kind of you look at your grass in the backyard. When it's too hot out, the grass ain't growing that much.
Right.
It's kind of like the oysters too. And I like, you know, when I'm on my way to work, I see the woods, I see the wineries, I see the flowers, I see how the animals are acting, and it all kind of coincides. I have bees and chickens. When the bees are really bringing in honey like crazy, in, you know, making honey like crazy, the oysters are growing like crazy. Now the bees are slowing down a little bit. Oysters are starting to slow down a little bit, which is I'm almost welcoming it now because I probably got too much stuff in. We got a bunch of seed in, and it's like now's our chance. We're not relaxing now. Now we're like, we better catch up because pretty soon,
right,
the fall, like stuff goes crazy and everything's coming to market at once. You got a ton of big stuff. Every cage is in the water. So it's all a build up to that. It's all a build up to having enough for the winter and into next spring.
Is this a small window now to like prep some of the cages or prep any of the gear, or you don't even have time like that? You still keeping them in the water?
Yeah, I mean, I build a lot of my own gear. I just bought a truckload of stuff built because I don't even have the time.
Okay.
We try to keep stuff out of the water until we have to put it in. I store some empty stuff in the water. I
Right.
just pulled a bunch out just to air dry on my barge because you put it in the water, it gets loaded with sea squirts and stuff.
Yep.
You don't want to put oysters in that because it's not going to have enough water flow. So in general, we pull our gear out and push fresh stuff in it enough and air dry the old gear where the fouling is under control. But, we've messed around and used power washers and stuff, but it's unbelievable the amount of coral,
Yeah.
sponge, sea squirts, barnacles, mussels, all kinds of stuff that clogs up the mesh on the cages. And then your oysters aren't really growing. And there's some sponges that grow on the cage and that live on the bottom that actually eat the oyster shell a little bit. And that's probably the number one, I'd say, predator in the Peconic, because you don't want to be selling oysters to somebody and the shell just crumbles. And that's either because the shell is too thin and it wasn't handled enough, or it's got that sponge. And if you get that sponge, you got problems.
Okay. That's funny. You actually meant that there was a comment. Somebody was curious if there was like actually a predator, to shellfish or oysters in particular. So you actually touched on it perfectly there. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I will preface that statement real quick, Matt, just so you know. Apparently, your deck boss is in the chat and he's answering a lot of these questions too. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. Where's that, on Instagram?
Yeah, he's tuning in. Yeah.
Nice.
So like right now we got we're fluctuating. At one point we're almost at 20 live viewers on Instagram. We're here on StreamYard, YouTube. So it's a pretty cool atmosphere, and that's kind of what it's evolved to at this point, like a live stream podcast. Because the comments are constantly flowing on Instagram. If you see us looking down, that's what we're checking, and a lot of inside jokes flowing and all that.
Hey, Chase is a lucky guy. He's doing a shucking lesson for 11 bachelorettes tomorrow in Sag Harbor.
Can I come?
He's doing
Mike, we're not going to make your archery shoot. We're going to be busy shucking. Well, I mean, that's a good topic right now. We haven't talked about that. Give us a quick breakdown, if you. I know you just did a video on it. I stay in touch with your Instagram.
A video on what? Bachelorette parties?
No. You guys saw enough of me last week in Nashville. We'll keep it clean. A simple breakdown, obviously, without having the tools on you for shucking. What's your preferred method?
Well, I like anything with a thin tip that you can get in that hinge. And I think what a lot of people do is you have to just have the feel for it, just use your brain. Like if you're a tradesman and you're putting a screw into a piece of wood, like you can tell if you're going to strip the head out, you got to push a little harder. So some people just push too hard on the oyster and crack right through the shell. Just let the knife guide you. Just push with your palm, wiggle in there. And once you're in there, do a nice little pry and then cut the muscle. And when you cut the bottom muscle, make sure you give it a nice push so you don't leave the muscle attached to the shell. A well-shucked oyster should be whole, intact, without the belly popped or all chopped up. It should look like God just removed the top shell, because texture is really important when you're eating an oyster. So, there's a lot of restaurants opening nowadays that want to have oysters on their menu, and they ain't got a freaking clue how to shuck them. And there's a lot of that going on.
I was just going to say, what's your biggest pet peeve at a restaurant when you get oysters?
And they're posting pictures on Instagram, and the stuff looks horrendous. People don't even know what a healthy oyster looks like. I mean, we do, obviously. So we see it. We're like, you won't see me post a picture of a bad-looking oyster on Instagram.
No, you take a lot of pride. This has literally been, I mean, you're roughly my age. So, I mean, it's over a decade you put into it already. This is your life now. You're building something that you could potentially pass down to the next generation. God willing. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something you can hang your hat on without a doubt.
Yeah, I think my son's like 20 years away from that. So we'll see if I make it that long.
I'm pretty sure he's going to fall right into it, my man. Yeah. I'm sure, without a doubt. All right, so we covered the shucking. Any other recipes? Just, I mean, I know people are sure curious if they're not a big oyster person. How can they incorporate this into a good, simple dinner? Something like that.
So So in the fall, the oysters are getting good and fat.
Mm-hmm.
Fall, around Christmas, New Year's, the oysters are big and fat. Us especially, and most farmers in general, all loaded up with a lot of nice product, a lot of stuff that's big or big and ugly that we put to the side. That stuff is beautiful for shucking into a pint container and using in an oyster pan roast, an oyster stew, an oyster chowder, or a fried oyster. And man, I have this old New York Times cookbook. It has like the simplest recipes. Before they used flour and cornstarch in the chowders, they just put potatoes in there and mashed half of the potatoes up to thicken it up.
Right.
And it's the most delicious chowder recipe. And then you have oyster stew, which is basically a lot of milk and oysters. And then you have fried oysters, which is my favorite food. Fry it just like you do eggplant or chicken cutlet. And then a really good one, especially for New Year's or something, is a pan roast, which has cream, hot sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and butter. And it goes great to like dip some crusty bread in it. And it's just like kind of a thick, creamy, hot Worcestershire sauce. Man, really good. And you put the oysters in at the end until they get like just barely cooked. That's awesome. So in the fall and the winter, talk to me about some big oysters, and you could definitely cook some up. And that's a real treat for everybody because people don't do it enough. They don't cook oysters enough, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, you definitely named a few. I like them just right out of the shell. So without a doubt, those few your recipes right there is. I'm gonna take note of that.
Yeah, the big fat ones for sure.
Okay. What you got, producer Chris? Talk to me.
Well, all right. So here's a question. Now, I live up near Newburgh. So
I don't know where that is.
It's I'm probably 70
It's
miles.
near Canada.
Oh, way up.
Yeah. See where you guys are in East Jersey.
You guys, what's up with this? You
70
guys,
miles north of the city. So I'm in real New York, not like you Long Islanders.
He's closer to Hoke.
Got it.
Now I do have a question because I have had Peconic Gold oysters at a restaurant and I saw it on the menu. And what's the time frame from the time that you get it out of the water and it's on ice to roughly the time that it may get to a restaurant?
Well, we sell to a couple of wholesalers. I'll say few, but right now it's really a couple of wholesalers, and the stuff does not last more than 4 or 5 days there. Now, oysters you can't tell the difference like up to 2 weeks. Then after that, they kind of lose their brininess, and nobody wants to eat old stuff. Like you can tell when you're eating something fresh.
Yeah. Well, Squatch likes to eat old stuff, but that's
yeah. So how long does it stay at the restaurant? If it's a good restaurant, they're ordering a lot. And they're going through product. And that's why you see a lot of these happy hours and stuff. They want to get you in the door. They want to get you buying some drinks, and they want to blow through some product. But a lot of times they will be getting rid of their old Blue Points or whatever from Connecticut. But the wholesalers we sell to, like the stuff is moving and everybody's busy out here. So hard for me to say, but I'd say most of our stuff is probably consumed within a week. I'd have to say.
That's awesome.
Here's something though. You can always ask to see the tag when you're out eating.
Oh, okay.
And they have to save the tag for 90 days in chronological order. You can
Really?
always ask to see the tag because you'll ask the waiter sometimes and they won't know where the stuff's from, but you can ask to see the tag.
Well, next time I'm at this restaurant, and I was talking with my buddy, we might be there tomorrow. If Peconic Gold is on the menu, I'm going to get the tag and I'm going to take a picture of that.
All right. Cool.
That's good recon. That's actually a good little piece of info just to have, just for general, just God forbid you eat something like that doesn't seem right. I had no idea you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff. What was did you just mention Blue Points from Connecticut though? There's a Blue Point oyster from Connecticut.
So Blue Points historically were like the most world-renowned oyster. They would get shipped over to the Queen of England. Blue Point has a rich history of, people wild harvesting oysters from the bottom there. But now blue points are from like Norwalk, Connecticut. They grow
Okay.
them on the bottom. They dredge them up,
Okay.
and they're kind of gnarly. There's some nice stuff that comes out of there, but they're doing so much volume. They're a little bit cheaper, and it's something that we're forced to compete with in the city where we're looking for, let's say, 95 to a dollar, 95 cents to a dollar a piece, and this stuff is coming in like 60 cents shipped. So
Yeah.
and New York is tough because everything's more expensive here. The taxes are more expensive here. The real estate's more expensive here. The labor is more expensive here. We're regulated more heavily here. So it kind of puts us at a disadvantage. And then we got, cheap stuff coming from Virginia also. And, you'd be surprised in New York City, I think like 80% of the shellfish is from out of state. Like you would think our stuff would be all over the city. And we have been shipping a lot to the city now, but we're the only New York oyster right now at Grand Central Oyster Bar, which was like that's one of the oldest oyster bars in the world. Yeah,
And
there's
you
not a
you
lot of
guys
New
made
York
the cut.
oysters
You were
in
the
New
only
York
one.
City. What's that?
You guys made the cut for New York. You were the only New York oyster there.
Yeah, I just sent them some messages and I said, there's a lot of us out here. We
Good for
got
you.
beautiful stuff, and I've been selling there sporadically, about once a week. We ship like 500 or 600 over there, which is no big deal. But yeah, I'm like get some of my buddies, get some of these other guys in there too. Like we're trying to team up a little bit, and like maybe we should call ourselves New York Oysters instead of Long Island Oysters. Like I don't know, we're trying to figure this out because it's like
Okay.
people don't know we're here. We're almost like the wine industry used to be, 10, 15 years ago, right, Dave? Nobody knew there was wine out
No.
here, really.
No.
Now it's like they're winning awards. Everybody's coming out here in the fall. So I feel like we're almost in that kind of situation where people should know we're here, but they really don't yet. We have
nobody thinks of Jersey as wine country. So
that's right.
Now that leads me to this question. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have too many guys doing what you're doing in the same area, but I'm sure you have other baymen out there close enough where you guys interact. And like, what type of relationship is that? Are you guys friendly? Is it strictly business and it's just that? Or like, if you were in a bind, could you call him? He could call you.
The other oyster guys, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say like 90% of us are pretty tight. We talk a lot.
It's good.
Buy seed from each other, exchange gear with each other.
Okay.
I'm double booked. Somebody asked me for a party, send it to my buddy. Yeah, we're pretty good like that. There's one or two guys that nobody likes, of course, but
yeah, you're gonna get that.
But yeah,
you're always gonna have that. I mean, look,
Yeah.
there's me and Rob, and then we have Dave.
Gotta have it. Gotta have one. Yeah, you gotta have one guy like that.
You gotta have a guy. You gotta have the guy.
Like that.
You brought this guy.
Yeah, but
any problems like with theft?
too,
honestly, anybody try and break into your cages that you notice or tamper with them?
Not really. I mean, they need some heavy duty equipment to lift our stuff up and know how we have it rigged up. And I haven't had any problems yet. I have my stuff just floating on the surface of the bay, which is a little nerve wracking, but I got lights around it. It's marked on the chart. Hopefully nobody crashes into it. There's been no record of anybody crashing into a floating cage. Over the past couple of years, the Suffolk County program in particular has been a little bit under attack by rich people that live on the water and these rich yacht clubs that say, we support aquaculture, but we don't want you doing it over here. Just go over there in the middle of the bay where it's impossible to do it, where we can't see you, and
what's their beef? Because they could see the floats in the cages?
Yeah, and they say that we're in their way because they do a sailboat race. It's like it's guys like that. Like, we sold 200,000 oysters, let's say, just through the winter. We don't see a single boat. All of a sudden, these guys come back for 4th of July, and they're at a public meeting saying, this is our bay. Like, historically, the bay has been for providing a livelihood, like harvesting, like for hundreds of years. That was the main purpose. If you would have told anybody 100 years ago, I'm going to sail around this bay, you're not going to make a living, like, they would have been crazy. And, I get it. I have like my own private little part of the bay that I'm leasing, but the amount of stuff that we're generating. We're helping the environment. We're stimulating the economy. I'm supposed to just abscond my lease when you come back from Florida all of a sudden. It's just crazy. These people are I don't know.
Well, I mean, listen, not that we're heavily political here on this show, but it's like migration, if you will. Migration is a great thing until there's buses of them dropping people off in Nantucket, and then all of a sudden it's a bad idea.
Yeah. Not to get too political, did you see the wind energy windmills breaking apart?
Yeah.
How sad is that? But they got to shut all the beaches down and stuff, and it's fishermen running that stuff over. Oh,
yeah.
What a disaster.
Didn't they just pass a bill for the island from Mordo, like 50 miles offshore? Not that far.
I don't know if there's. I thought they stopped it. I don't know what's going on here, but hopefully they see that disaster up there and stop it.
No, they never learn.
Well, I will say this, Matt. I have one of my slogans that I use with everything that I've started, whatever pursuit is hunt local. And obviously, I didn't make up that saying. There's always shop local, do this local, do that local. I think
you might not have made it up, but you certainly own the trademark to it.
That's right. Put a little TM around that sucker.
Nice.
Anyway, I see what you're doing, and I would like to just again tip my hat to you, because without a doubt, for your neck of the woods, your neighborhood, everybody that you interact with, I know for a fact they know the caliber man you are. Everything you do is you try and do it the best you can. You're providing, like you said, you're providing a service, but you're doing it the right way. You're leaving things better than the way you found it, essentially. And that's what you're always trying to promote. And you've been that way your whole life. So, I mean, without a doubt, you're doing something that's not easy to do, and you're doing it damn well, and you're doing it the right way. So congrats on that, buddy.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Chris, we are at that point. We can wrap up any questions that we got, and then we can start wrapping up the show. I will let Matt get out all his social media at the end.
All right. Yeah, I do have one final question for you. So what's your favorite song, and why is it Billy Joel, Downeaster Alexa?
Jeez.
I don't know if that's my favorite one, but it's a good one. It's a good one.
Where do you come up with these questions?
What do you mean? What do you think I do at work all day? You think I actually do
That's
work?
true. That is true. All right, give the man a real question so I can end it.
All right, so I do have one final question here. Now, what do you do in the off season?
We don't really have an off season. The winter is. We always have a couple winter projects as far as harvesting in the winter. So in the fall, like everything's so crazy. We got all our gear in the water. Pretty much takes us all winter. We pick our days a little bit. Takes us all winter to get through the farm one last time. So we'll pick our days. We'll be out probably 3 days a week all winter. The other couple days be working on stuff here, making plans. And, we have a couple winter projects that I'm brainstorming right now for next year. Every year you kind of see, all right, what am I going to need for the next year? And always something. So, yeah, we're busy year round.
I bet. It's a tough gig. I know we keep stressing it, but we can't stress it enough. Once people start following that Instagram that we've been talking about, so why don't you give everybody a nice plug? Instagram, YouTube, whatever you do have, mention the shop that you got, the little farm stand, where they can find that. If you want to make that public here, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, at Peconic Gold Oysters on Instagram. We have a Facebook page also. My farm stand, self-serve farm stand, open from sun up to sundown. We got bags of 24 oysters for $30. Some knives in there. Stay tuned for merch drop, hats and shirts. All details on my Instagram. And yeah.
I think this will be a part 2. I think we're going to follow up once it gets towards the nitty gritty in the wintertime. See how you're doing.
Check in the winter. All right.
We'll see how long the beard gets.
Yeah, I don't know. It's getting hot, but yeah.
So
I had the Lyme's disease. I had to keep my face a little bit out of the sun,
Yeah, it's tough, man. I know we were talking about that before the show. I mean, why not? We're on the topic, guys. All you guys out there that doing your summer scouting right now, you're hanging your cameras, especially here on the island. Be careful. Spray down your clothes. Matt lives on the water. He got bit just from his property. You guys here on the island, you really got to be careful. Wear the long pants. Tape your handcuffs if you got it. I know it looks crazy. Permethrin, whatever. It's not going to stop them, but it'll slow them down. I mean, Chris, I know you're very busy at work, but you're always out in the woods constantly. Is it that drastic of a difference just going a little bit further north where you're at, where the ticks aren't that bad?
Oh no, I told you, and I tell people all the time, I almost got killed by a tick, and
Yeah.
as much time as I spend in the woods, the tick that almost killed me was at the wood pile behind the house.
Right.
So I mean, you never know where you're going to get it, and the big thing is check yourself all the time, and if you do get bit, don't wait, go see your doctor.
That
Yep.
thing almost took you out, huh, Chris?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
spent
it was
5
bad.
days in the ICU.
Wow.
I was in a bad way.
What was it? Lyme disease?
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, I'll tell everybody the story. I got bit by a tick. I didn't realize that I was bit for about a week, and then when I found the tick, I said, "Oh, I was kind of feeling shitty." Found the tick bite, was like, "Oh, pull it out." Started to feel better. A day later, I just crashed, and that next week, I was running like 103 temperature. It was terrible. I couldn't move. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. My mother was a hospital administrator at the time, and I went to her house for dinner because I was staying home from work. I was just sick, and I couldn't deal with it. Stuck a thermometer in my mouth, and she was like, looked at it, and it was 102.5, and she was like, "We usually would call a doctor at 99.1. Like, what are you doing?" I'm like, "No, I'll be fine. I'm gonna go home. If I take my temperature and I'll be fine." Like within a half hour, I was back home. I took my temperature and it was like 103.1. I called her and she's like, "I'm taking you to the hospital right now. I'm coming to get you." I went into the hospital. Turns out that the bacteria that causes Lyme disease actually was attacking my heart, and only one chamber of my heart was pumping properly, and the electrical signals, once it got through that chamber, would fizzle out. So my heart was my whole body was being kept alive by one chamber of my heart. And I actually had a doctor's appointment the next day scheduled to get checked out for this. And when I spoke to the 4 different doctors they had assigned to me because I was that bad, they told me I had a 50-50 shot of making it to the next day, to even making it to my doctor's appointment. So I went to the hospital at the exact right time, and they said if I had waited throughout the weekend, I definitely would have died.
Wow.
So it's something serious, guys. Check yourselves, and it's fresh right now. But as everybody saw, when I was out in the middle of the winter, all right, it was 28 degrees when I was out pulling cameras this winter, and I found ticks on me. So
yeah,
you need to check yourselves. You need to be vigilant. And, if you do find a tick on you or you do find a bite, don't wait. Go see your doctor. Have them run a test on you, because the longer you wait with Lyme's disease, the worse off it is. Right now they pump me full of so many antibiotics, and they caught it immediately. I test negative now. So that just goes to show you, if I had waited and it didn't attack me the way that it did, you never know. I'd be having those long lasting symptoms, and it never, at that point, it never really goes away. So
right.
Again, everybody check yourselves. That's all I can say.
That's it. We really went 180 on the end of this show, but
Yeah,
it's worth, if it came up in the topic, so it's worth mentioning. And sometimes we glance over it. We took a little bit more serious approach with it tonight, but again, it is true. Be safe. Check yourself. That's all we can say. We're not gonna beat that into a pulp anymore for tonight. Chris, I think it's that time, buddy. Why don't we start wrapping it up officially? All good things must come to an end.
All right. So Matt, if you could one more time, just tell everybody where they can find your content.
At Peconic Gold Oysters on Instagram. And thank you for having me, guys.
No,
absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time out tonight.
Absolutely.
This is definitely, it's an interesting topic. It's a little bit different. And right here at Pursuit Live, we are all things outdoors. We are not just a strictly hunting related show, even though that seems to be what a lot of us do. So it's always nice to mix things up and talk about something that I love, because I love oysters. So, again, Matt, thank you for taking the time out tonight. Everybody that tuned in and everybody that'll watch this in the future, again, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for watching. It's you guys are the reason we do this, and we appreciate you guys tuning in every Friday night. So catch us again every Friday night right here, 8:00. Dave, thank you again.
You got it, buddy.
Even though you showed up late, won't look good on your quarterly review, but
it's all right. I know a guy.
So with that, everybody, thank you again, and we'll see you next week.